We got to remember that all during the Cold War, it was the left that said Gorbachev is really the real deal. Even Brezhnev is not Hitler. It was always not pro-Soviet, but arms control. We got to have dialogue. It was all the left, and that was the right that said don't trust the Russians. And then we had the Hillary-Obama regnum where they attacked George Bush. Yes, they went to Geneva in 2009. They took a jacuzzi button off an old, at the last moment, they reset it. They mistranslated the word. But the whole subtext was that George Bush was too mean to Russia because they went into Georgia over Ossetia and he put sanctions and we're going to reset. We're going to talk nice. And then they had Ambassador McFaul and they had John Kerry after Hillary. And the whole idea was we're going to convince Putin that he was dealt too harshly by the Republicans and the right. We're going to appeal to the better angels of their nature. And we're going to win them over, and they're going to have a constitutional system just like ours. And Putin took one look at them and thought, these people are crazy, and they're stupid, and they're naive, and being a killer and a dictator, I'm going to take advantage of them every chance I can get. I went into Ossetia. Now I'm going to go into Donbass. I'm going to go into Crimea. I'm going to send the Wagner group into Syria. I'm going to disrupt Syria. I'm going to take the Hassids. I'm going to defend them against the Americans if I have to. This is great. I have an asymmetrical missile deal with, and all of a sudden they woke up and remember the hot mic in Seoul in 2012 in March when Obama said, tell Medvedev, tell Vladimir that if this is my last election, if he's a little bit flexible and gives me space, I will be flexible on missile defense. We forget that they both kept their bargain. We dismantled missile defense in the Czech Republic and Poland, and Putin behaved until Obama was reelected. And then a year and a half later, he went into the Donbass and Crimea. So what I'm getting at, it was the left who said we have to reach out to Russia, and then they were slapped down and humiliated by Putin. You go from loving the Russians to hating the Russians, and all of a sudden every villain in every Hollywood movie, you know the type, they've all got the Russian accent, they have a missing tooth, they've got Orthodox crosses all over their tattoo bodies, they're horrible people. It was just Russia, Russia, and then Trump came in and, you know, they had James Clapper said he's a Russian asset, he was Putin's poodle. And when you look at it, who was dealing with Russia? It was Hillary Clinton. She hired Christopher Steele, illegally, a foreign national that's barred by law from working on a campaign. And what did he do? He went and got Russian-fed intelligence that was all lies about PP tape and all this crap. And they used it. And then what did Donald Trump actually do? And you notice in that interview with Tucker was trying to draw Putin out to say something nice about Trump, maybe for controversy, and Putin wouldn't do it. And it wasn't because he was afraid of anything, but he looked at Donald Trump and he must have been thinking that SOB slapped sanctions on our oligarchs much higher than Obama ever had. He killed 200 of the Wagner group. He stopped us in Syria. He got out of a missile deal that we were taking them to the cleaners. He flooded the world with cheap American oil and crashed my income. Then the SOB gave advanced offensive weapons to Ukraine, javelins and stuff that Obama had refused to do. And he was tough on Putin. He was considered a Russian poodle, but Putin knew he was tough on him. Trump, in Art of the Deal style, said things like, he didn't go into Ukraine when I was president because I told him that I might hit the spires of the Kremlin. We probably did say that. And that's how the left has demonized Russia, because it was all started as they were humiliated because naively in a utopian fashion, they said, we are so moral people, we're so persuasive, we're so degreed, we're so educated, we're the world's globalist intellectuals. We're going to go over and show Mr. Putin that he can be just like us. He can have everything we have. And Putin looked at him and said, look, I'm a dictator. We're an Orthodox country. We say we do not want a multiracial society. We do not want transgenderism. We do not want gay marriage. We don't want any of what you have to offer. Screw you. And they thought, well, why would he do that? And then they got angry, and here we are. Where if they had just said they're different than we are, but that doesn't mean we can't have a working, realistic, realpolitik relationship. That's the way we always did it. And I hope we can do that again and break them away from China or vice versa.
What paths exist out of this situation?
We've got to have some way to resolve the Ukrainian situation. We cannot let Putin win and absorb Ukraine, and we cannot let Ukraine fight forever and lose half of its population either to immigration or to combat casualties. So there has to be a mechanism that does not reward Putin and gets him back, and yet understands that the Crimea and the Donbass were never going to be Ukrainian, given that checkered history and the fact that, the Crimea was an independent country in 92 and 93. So that's the first thing that we have to do. And the second thing we have to do is we've got to find out where we can work with the Russians and what are the things that bind us. They do not like Islamic terrorism, and they have a border with China, and they're a vast country full of natural resources with a tiny population in relative terms. And China has about over 10 times the population, 1.4 or 1.5 billion versus 145 million. And it's resource short. And that's a historical trigger to a conflict. So, we can triangulate with them, be honest. That's what we were in the past. There's an area where we can work together if you believe, as I do, that China poses a real threat to us. I don't mean we want to go to war, but we have to deter China, and we have to clean up our own act financially and in terms of productivity and everything, and education. It's not just China's fault. We allowed them to do this. But part of that strategy is an Indian, Russian, European, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Australia alliance. And Russia can be not necessarily a member of that, but it can be favorable to that if it feels that it serves the same goals, and that is the containment of China vis-a-vis Russia. That doesn't mean we have to approve of what he does. It doesn't have to prove that he doesn't have elections. It doesn't have to prove of any of that. And you can really see something here. When this administration came in, they told us they would not talk after the killing of Mr. Khashoggi in the Saudi embassy in Turkey. They told us they would not talk to Saudi Arabia. Kerry and Clinton and Biden and all of the luminaries, they outdid each other in expressing hatred of Saudi Arabia. And then suddenly, and they made fun of Jared Kushner and the Abrams Accords. They said it was just a joke, and they stopped it all. And then they found out that when you have Saudi Arabia collaborating with Iran to pump less and less oil, and you're right before a midterm election and the price of gas is going up, they went around and begged Saudi Arabia, they begged Iran, they begged Russia, they put us in a terrible situation. They understood that the money in the Middle East comes from the Gulf monarchies, and they may be right-wing, but in the real world in which we live, compared to Hamas or the Palestinian Authority or Hezbollah or Iran, they're much preferable. And so what are they doing now? They're talking. Biden went over there and tried to meet. They didn't want to talk to him about it, but they did. And now they're courting the Saudis. They're saying nothing but nice things about the Saudis. They're saying, don't believe anything we said during the campaign or what we did the first 2 years. We love the Saudis. The Saudis are the key to peace. The Saudi money and the Kuwaiti money will rebuild Gaza. They're an integral partner. Well, if they can do that with Saudi Arabia, they can do it with Russia.
Don't forget to subscribe to our Alerts newsletter, and you'll never miss an episode.